Hey, if you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that noti bell because it really helps out. Few films in the Harry Potter saga have ever felt as immersive, daring, and transformative as Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. While the first two entries, directed by Christopher Columbus, were charming and faithful adaptations that captured the wonder of J.K. Rowling's magical world, it wasn't until Alfonso Cuarón stepped into the director's chair that the series truly evolved into something deeper, darker, and more cinematically refined. With a distinct shift in tone and visual storytelling, Prisoner of Azkaban not only elevated the franchise, it redefined it. Cuarón's vision gave Hogwarts a lived-in texture, a sense of mystique and complexity, and treated its characters like evolving adolescents rather than wide-eyed children. In my opinion, it's this third installment that stands above all the others. It's not just the best Harry Potter movie, it's a cinematic gem that outshines its peers in style, character work, and emotional resonance. What makes Prisoner of Azkaban so special is how it marks a significant tonal shift within the series. It embraces maturity, not just in its aesthetics, but in its themes, characters, and narrative structure. Gone are the rigid visual compositions of earlier films, instead we're treated with dynamic camera work, muted and moody color grading, and a score from John Williams that is less whimsical and more introspective, for lack of a better word. The story doesn't revolve just around a magical MacGuffin or final boss battle, but rather centers on Harry's internal struggle with identity, fear, and belonging. Time travel, shapeshifters, and hidden truths give this plot a layered complexity, but it is the human core of the film, the emotional journey of Harry coming to terms with his past and discovering new forms of family that gives this movie its lasting impact. Sirius Black's introduction, the twist involving Peter Pettigrew, and the revelation about the Marauders make for a story rich with tension and payoff. Moreover, Prisoner of Azkaban respects the intelligence of its audience more than any other film in the series. It doesn't over-explain or spoon-feed its mysteries, instead it weaves them into the narrative naturally, allowing viewers to piece things together themselves. The magical world feels more organic here, with lessons from Professor Lupin offering both plot progression and philosophical depth. Characters like Hermione are given new dimensions, especially through the Time Turner subplot, and the bonds between the trio deepen as they face more mature and ambiguous challenges. Every creative decision, from the hippogriff Buckbeak soaring through the sky to the haunting imagery and feel of the Dementors, feels both bold and purposeful. There's a rather poetic, almost art house quality to Prisoner of Azkaban that no other Harry Potter film quite captures. That is why, in my view, it doesn't just stand as a turning point in the franchise, it is the peak of it. With the release of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the entire tone and texture of the franchise pivoted in a bold and unforgettable direction. Gone were the bright colours, the safe corridors of Hogwarts, and the feeling that every danger would be wrapped up neatly by the end of the term. In its place emerged something far more emotionally complex and visually daring. Under Alfonso's direction, the Wizarding World took on a whole new life, one that no longer viewed Harry's journey solely through the lens of childlike wonder, but instead through the eyes of a young man grappling with trauma, legacy, and fear. For the first time, the magic didn't just dazzle, it haunted. Scenes were now bathed in overcast skies, cold stone, and shifting shadows, reflecting the internal struggles brewing within Harry himself. It was here that audiences understood. Harry Potter had grown up, and the story was going to grow up right alongside him. This tonal transformation wasn't just a matter of darker lighting or brooding music, it was a thematic evolution. The first two films, for all of their charm and loyalty to the books, were fundamentally lighthearted, but narratives where problems could be solved through courage and cleverness. In contrast, Prisoner of Azkaban dared to say that not every danger comes with a clear villain or a satisfying resolution. It introduced grey morality, ambiguity, and emotional pain. Sirius Black is feared throughout the film as a murderous traitor, but by the end he is revealed to be something else entirely. A victim, a guardian, and a remnant of a past Harry never got to know. The central conflict isn't about defeating an enemy, it's about uncovering truth, confronting fear, and accepting that the world is not as simple as good versus evil. Dementors, chilling metaphors for depression and helplessness, replace more fantastical threats. The implications of their presence and the trauma they stir in Harry push the narrative and the audience into far deeper emotional territory than anything the franchise had attempted before. What Prisoner of Azkaban achieved was more than a tonal shift, it was a declaration that Harry Potter could no longer remain a children's story, where it opened up the doors for the rest of the saga to explore mature, complex themes like loss, betrayal, destiny, and mortality. This chapter in Harry's life wasn't just about learning new spells or solving a magical mystery, it was about coping with the absence of parents he never knew, discovering a godfather who might finally provide him with a sense of family, and facing the terrifying realization that the world he inhabits is full of unseen, lurking threats. It was about growing up. From this point onward, the series never returned to the carefree wonder of Philosopher's Stone or Chamber of Secrets. Instead, Prisoner of Azkaban marked the bridge between innocence and experience, a bittersweet turning point where the magic remained but the safety was gone. And that is what makes it so essential. Without this bold step into darkness, the story of Harry Potter would never have evolved into the rich, emotionally resonant saga that it ultimately became. For all the ensemble charm that the Golden Trio brought to the earlier Harry Potter stories, it's in The Prisoner of Azkaban that a noticeable shift in group chemistry begins to surface. Ron Weasley, while still present, feels increasingly peripheral, not just in terms of plot, but also emotionally as well. As the narrative deepens and the stakes rise, it becomes evident that Harry and Hermione operate on a higher wavelength of maturity, courage, and empathy than Ron. Whether it's Hermione's unwavering loyalty, or her ability to take initiative under pressure, or even Harry's emerging sense of responsibility and emotional awareness, these two characters grow dramatically in tandem throughout this installment. Their bond deepens not just through action, but through shared experience. Time travel, dangerous magical creatures, and uncovering painful truths. In contrast, Ron, often reduced to just comic relief or petty jealousy, doesn't evolve in the same meaningful way here. And it's not a knock against his character, but a clear indication, at least to me, that the story might have been stronger if it began leaning more into the Harry-Hermione dynamic and letting Ron recede more naturally into the background. This film in particular gives us a multitude of quiet, powerful moments between Harry and Hermione that spark something more profound than mere friendship. The way she supports him when he collapses from Dementor exposure, her willingness to break the rules and the laws of time itself to help him, and most notably, the unforgettable Buckbeak flight. All these scenes carry a natural emotional intimacy, with that Buckbeak ride soaring over the lake with only each other, laughing and holding tight as the world drops away, feels like the perfect moment to plant the seed of something more, something romantic. It's pure cinematic poetry, a visual metaphor for trust, for freedom, for the rare kind of connection where one soul seems to instinctively understand the other. Hermione's eyes light up not just with awe, but with the joy at sharing this with Harry. And he, so often burdened with isolation, finally seems at peace in someone else's presence. It isn't forced. It isn't overplayed, it simply feels real. To many viewers, including myself, this was the natural moment to have set their romance in motion. Looking back at the overall arc of this series, this opportunity feels even more significant. Harry and Hermione complemented each other in ways that suggested long-term compatibility, not just as allies in the war against Voldemort, but as partners for life. Where Ron was often insecure, reactive, or emotionally immature to say the least, Hermione was decisive, compassionate, and fiercely brave. Exactly the traits that Harry needed beside him, and Harry in turn always saw Hermione's strength, never patronized her intellect, and shared her burden with quiet loyalty. Prisoner of Azkaban is the film that most clearly spotlights their natural harmony, even in the chaos of the Shrieking Shack or the heartbreak of watching Sirius slip through their fingers. It's Harry and Hermione who hold each other up. If ever there was a turning point, not just for the tone of the franchise, but for its relationships, this film was it. To me, and I'm sure so many other Harry Potter fans, it's hard not to imagine how much stronger, more emotionally grounded, and ultimately satisfying the series could have been if the seeds planted here between Harry and Hermione had been allowed to blossom, while Ron gracefully stepped aside into a role more suited to comic relief or secondary support. One of the most unexpected and brilliantly crafted elements of Prisoner of Azkaban is its use of time travel through the magical device known as the Time Turner. Time travel as a concept can often collapse under the weight of its own paradoxes, becoming needlessly convoluted or leaving glaring plot holes, but Quaron and the story handle it with an elegance and clarity that is rare, especially in a fantasy film geared towards younger viewers. The time turner sequence is woven into the narrative with seamless precision. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and it doesn't try to rewrite history in overly complicated ways. Instead, it loops the timeline in a clean, satisfying manner that rewards close attention. Every mysterious or offbeat moment earlier in the film, Buckbeak's survival, the rock hitting Harry, the mysterious Patronus, falls into place once we realize Harry and Hermione were already there, hidden in plain sight. It's the kind of narrative finesse that makes the final act of this film so memorable and so rewatchable. What makes this take on time travel so uniquely Harry Potter-esque is that it is rooted in emotion, not science fiction. The time turner isn't some cold machine, it's a magical object tied to Hermione's academic diligence and ultimately used to save lives, not change the world. There's a beautiful symmetry to its purpose. It allows Harry and Hermione to become the very forces that helped them in the first timeline, creating a loop of self-fulfilling hope and courage. More importantly, it empowers the characters without compromising the story's stakes. Harry's realization that it was he himself who cast the life-saving Patronus is one of the most moving scenes in the entire franchise. A revelation of self-belief and emotional growth that hits harder than any spell, jewel, or magical creature. It's magical at its most personal, and yet, despite how successful this magical concept is, how imaginative and narratively potent, it's never explored again in the rest of this series, not even once. This omission feels like one of the greatest missed opportunities in the entire wizarding world. The time turner was more than just a cool magical MacGuffin or magical trinket, it was a door into deeper, richer storytelling possibilities. Imagine how it could have been used in later films, not as a deus ex machina, but as a thematic or emotional anchor in a world increasingly dominated by war, loss, and trauma. Yet after Prisoner of Azkaban, time travel is never seriously revisited. In fact, it's quietly retconned or ignored altogether, as if the magical world itself forgot such an item ever truly existed. This choice, while likely made to avoid narrative complications, robs this series of one of its most intriguing and meaningful ideas. Time travel in this film wasn't just a plot twist, it was a character-defining moment, a tool for reflection, redemption, and self-discovery. It was a perfect example of magic used with purpose, and its absence in future installments is a quiet tragedy. In a series so filled with imaginative concepts, the time turner remains one of the boldest and most underutilized, making Prisoner of Azkaban all the more special and singular in this magical franchise. Among the many masterstrokes of Prisoner of Azkaban, the introduction of Sirius Black stands as one of the most important, and emotionally resonant as well. At first glance, he is cast as the story's ominous new threat, a raving lunatic who managed to escape from Azkaban, said to have betrayed Harry's parents and supposedly obsessed with killing the boy who lived. The way the film paints him with menace, whispered legends, a grim mugshot on wanted posters, and an unsettling fixation on Harry creates a sense of dread that hangs over the entire narrative. But as the truth unravels in the Shrieking Shack, Sirius is revealed to be something entirely different. Not a murderer, but a wronged man. Not a villain, but family. And in that reversal lies one of the film's greatest emotional payoffs. Because in a movie defined by shadows, by dementors that feed on fear, and the looming threat of death, Sirius becomes a symbol of hope, a living link to Harry's lost past, and a vision of the future he might have had. What makes Sirius's role so compelling is the way he embodies both tragedy and warmth. He has suffered immensely, 12 years in Azkaban, falsely accused, robbed of his youth and his friends. Yet when he speaks, there is still fire, humor and affection behind his eyes. His interactions with Harry are brief but profoundly moving. In the span of a few short scenes, Sirius offers something Harry has never had before. Someone who wants him, someone who loves him, not because of his fame or destiny, but because he's James and Lily's son, a part of a family. The scene where Sirius shyly offers Harry a home is one of the most emotionally potent in the entire film. It's not about grand gestures or magical battles, it's about a boy who has been alone for far too long and a man who's been waiting far too long to love someone again, and in that quiet exchange, the darkness of the film lifts, however briefly, and becomes a spark of genuine joy in a world that has up to this point offered Harry very little of it. Sirius also brings with him a certain level of levity that counterbalances the film's heaviest moments. After all, this is a story steeped in grimness, the soul-sucking presence of dementors, the haunting memory of Harry's parents' death, and the near execution of Buckbeak, a creature symbolic of freedom and innocence. Yet Sirius manages to cut through that tension with wit, sarcasm, and unfiltered honesty. He's not polished like Dumbledore or reserved like Lupin, he's raw, reckless, and delightfully human. It's in Sirius that the story finds an emotional heartbeat, one that doesn't shy away from the pain but knows how to laugh in spite of it. His transformation from the snarling, misunderstood prisoner to the playful godfather, or dogfather in this case, provides a release valve for the emotional pressure that has been building throughout this film. He adds not only narrative depth but tonal balance. Without him, the film might have risked feeling unrelentingly bleak, but with him it becomes a story about the endurance of love, the possibility of healing, and the importance of found family. In a tale dominated by fear and isolation, Sirius Black is the rare flicker of light, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can still remain. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban isn't just a turning point in tone or style, it's a masterful evolution of the entire franchise. It dares to let go of the lighter whimsy of its predecessors and ventures into deeper emotional waters, trusting the audience to follow with it. The film doesn't rely on grand battles or prophecies to define its greatness, not yet anyway. Instead, it thrives on atmosphere, character, and emotion. Alfonso Cuarón's direction brings to the wizarding world a feeling of life in a way that feels both intimate and expansive. Every shadow, every glimmer of light, every whispered truth feels significant. It introduces meaningful character arcs, quietly revolutionary plot mechanics like time travel, and a maturity in storytelling that marks the beginning of Harry's transformation from a wide-eyed boy to a young man shaped by love, loss, and choices. It's this film that plants the seeds for everything to come, and yet it stands tall as its own beautifully told story. From the soulful reveal of Sirius Black to the magical elegance of the Time Turner and even the subtle shift in how we see Ron, Harry, and Hermione as a trio, this film redefines what Harry Potter can be. It delivers dark truths with poetic beauty, balancing joy and sorrow with a deft hand. It captures what feels like to grow up when the world no longer feels as safe, but magic still lingers in the corners if you know where to look. Prisoner of Azkaban is the rare kind of film in the franchise that doesn't just continue a story, it elevates it where it becomes daring, atmospheric, emotional, and altogether unforgettable. As far as I'm concerned, this is the best Harry Potter film, and it always will be. Mischief managed.